I'm Paige, 32, female. I live alone in a small apartment overlooking the city, a place of calm I desperately need after my days spent in the controlled chaos of an airport control tower. As an air traffic controller, my life is a series of high-stakes decisions where a moment's hesitation can have catastrophic consequences. My one true escape, my reward for the stress, was my car, a pristine, midnight, blue coupe that I had saved for years to buy. It was my sanctuary until my family decided my hard work was their opportunity. They demanded I give up my prized possession for the most absurd reason imaginable, setting off a chain reaction of deceit that would shatter our family forever. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The call came on a Tuesday, my one day off for the week. I was polishing the chrome trim on my car, a therapeutic ritual that helped me decompress. My phone buzzed, showing a picture of my mother, Linda. I answered with a smile, expecting the usual weekly catch-up. Instead, her voice was laced with an unnerving, manufactured sweetness. "Paige, honey, your father and I have the most wonderful news." I leaned against the cool metal of my car. "Oh yeah, what is it?" "We're finally getting him, a purebred golden retriever puppy. We've been on the waiting list for 2 years." I smiled genuinely. My parents, Robert and Linda, had talked about getting this specific dog since my dad retired from his accounting firm. "That's amazing, Mom. I'm so happy for you both." "Yes, well." She cleared her throat, and the sweetness curdled into something more strategic. "There is one small complication. The breeder's fee, the supplies, the insurance. It's a bit more than we budgeted for, but we have a brilliant idea that solves everything." I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. My parents had a history of brilliant ideas that usually involved my wallet. Ever since I'd landed my high-paying job, they'd started seeing me less as a daughter and more as a financial safety net. It was a stark contrast to how they treated my younger sister, Chloe. At 25, Chloe was still drifting, working just enough hours as a barista to fund her dreams of becoming a social media influencer. My parents coddled her, paying her rent and covering her bills, always saying she just needed a little more time to find her footing. "What's the idea, Mom?" I asked, my voice cautious. "Well, you know how Chloe's old car is always breaking down," she began. "And you have that lovely, expensive car you barely drive. I cut her off my back straightening. I drive it every day. It's how I get to work." "Don't be dramatic, Paige. It's a 40-minute commute. You could take the train. Anyway, your father and I were thinking you could sell your car to Chloe. That way, she has a reliable vehicle, and we can use the money we would have spent on a car for her to pay for the dog. It's perfect." I was stunned into silence. Sell my car, the car I spent 5 years saving for, the car that was the culmination of countless overtime hours. It was valued at over $36,000. "Mom, Chloe can't afford my car. There's no way." "Oh, don't be silly." She laughed, a dismissive, airy sound. "We wouldn't expect her to pay what you paid. Your father did the math. If you sell it to her for, say, $1,000, that's more than fair. It's a family price." I felt the blood drain from my face. $1,000. "For my car, Mom, that's not a family price. That's a joke. I'm not giving my sister a $35,000 gift so you can buy a dog. That's insane." The line went quiet for a moment. Then my father's stern voice took over. "Paige, that's a very selfish attitude," Robert said, his tone dripping with disappointment. "We've done so much for you. Your sister needs this. It's about helping family. You sit up in your tower all day, detached from real-world problems. This is a real problem for Chloe." The insult stung. Detached, I was the most grounded person in the family, the only one living in reality. My detached job paid for this car. I said, my voice cold, "The answer is no, it's not happening." I ended the call, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. The request wasn't just unreasonable, it was a slap in the face. It told me exactly what I was worth to them, less than a puppy and my sister's fleeting convenience. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. It was only the beginning. The days that followed were a masterclass in emotional manipulation. It started with Chloe. She sent me a long, rambling text message filled with crying emojis, talking about how she felt like such a failure and how a reliable car would be the one thing to help her get her life on track. She claimed she needed it to drive to brand collaborations and photo shoots, which I knew were mostly just her taking selfies in different parks. It was pathetic. but the undertone of your holding me back was clear. Then my parents escalated. My mother would call me weeping, talking about how she didn't know how they'd failed as parents to raise such a self-centered daughter. My father would send Kurt one-line emails, family is supposed to come first, you've clearly forgotten that. They painted me as a villain, a greedy dragon hoarding treasure while my poor, helpless sister struggled. They ambushed me at my apartment that weekend. They showed up unannounced, Chloe in tow with her eyes red and puffy from fake crying. They sat on my couch and launched a coordinated assault. We just don't understand, Paige. My mom began, her voice trembling. Chloe is your sister. Don't you want to see her succeed? I do. I said firmly, but giving her my car won't magically make her successful. She needs to learn responsibility. How can she be responsible when she's constantly worried about her car breaking down on the highway? My dad retorted, his voice rising. You have the power to fix this for her, for us. Is that car really more important than your family's happiness? The pressure was immense. They made me feel like the worst person in the world. Every argument I made was twisted into an example of my selfishness. They wore me down, chipping away at my resolve until I was exhausted. Finally, after 3 hours of relentless psychological warfare, I broke. Fine. I said, the word tasting like defeat. Fine, but we are doing this on my terms. Their faces lit up, victorious. I laid out the conditions, trying to salvage some control. I am not selling it for $1,000. That's ridiculous. We'll write up a contract. Chloe will pay me $300 a month for 5 years. It's a massive discount, but it's fair, and the title stays in my name. I remain the legal owner until the very last payment is made. If she misses a single payment, deal is off, and I take the car back. Do you understand? They agreed instantly, of course. My father, the retired accountant, even offered to draft the contract himself to make it official. They promised on everything holy that Chloe would honor the deal. They thanked me profusely, hugging me and telling me what a wonderful daughter and sister I was. It all felt hollow. The next day, Chloe came to pick up the keys. My father presented me with a simple, one-page document he'd typed up. It outlined the payment plan and the title condition. We both signed it. It felt flimsy, but it was a contract between family. I thought that meant something. Handing Chloe the keys was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It felt like I was handing over a piece of myself. As she drove away, waving happily, a knot of dread formed in my gut. I had a terrible feeling that I hadn't just lost my car, I'd lost a whole lot more. I had trusted a promise that was already broken. The first month went by, and as expected, no payment arrived. When I texted Chloe to ask about it, she replied with a photo of a receipt for a new designer handbag. Oops, so sorry, totally forgot. Things have been so crazy. I'll get it to you next week, promise. The money never came. The second month was the same story, only this time the excuse was an expensive brunch with her influencer friends. My calls started going to her voicemail. Meanwhile, her social media was a constant stream of pictures featuring my car. Chloe at the beach with the coupe parked perfectly in the background. Chloe on a weekend trip to a winery, the car's midnight, blue paint gleaming in the sun. She even gave it a name in her posts, #Blue Dream. Each post felt like a twist of the knife. She wasn't just using my car, she was flaunting my generosity as her own success. When I called my parents to complain, they brushed it off. Oh, give her a break, Paige, my mother would say. She's just excited. She's young. The money will come. My dad was even more dismissive. It's a minor cash flow issue. You don't need the money right away, do you? Don't start a family war over a few hundred dollars. It was the principle of the matter. It was the blatant disrespect, but they refused to see it. They were too busy posting pictures of their new golden retriever puppy, who they had named Prince. The real alarm bells started ringing about 2 months after I'd handed over the keys. I had stopped by my parents' house to pick up some old photo albums. They weren't home, but they'd told me where the spare key was. As I was searching in the study, I heard my mother's car pull into the driveway. I didn't want another confrontation, so I stayed quiet, planning to slip out once she was inside. She came in, talking on her phone, her voice low. I could hear her through the thin wall. She was talking to my Aunt Carol. No, it's all sorted now. My mom was saying, Robert handled the paperwork last month. Thank goodness for his connections at the DMV. He found a way to declare it as a family gift so we could bypass all that nonsense Paige was insisting on. My blood ran cold. I pressed my ear against the wall, my heart hammering in my chest. Well, she was being so difficult about it. My mother continued, her voice dripping with indignation. insisting on keeping the title in her name. Can you believe it? As if she doesn't trust her own sister. It was just easier to simplify things. Now the car is officially Chloe's and we can all move on. Paige doesn't even need to know. What she doesn't know won't hurt her. The room started to spin, bypass the nonsense, simplify things. I stumbled back from the wall, knocking over a stack of books. My mother heard the noise and called out, "Hello, is someone there?" I didn't answer. I grabbed the albums and fled out the back door, my mind reeling. They hadn't just broken a promise. They had gone behind my back and committed fraud. They hadn't just manipulated me into giving up my car. They had stolen it. The whispers I heard through that wall confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated, deliberate betrayal. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely unlock my phone. The first person I called was Ben. He was an old friend from college who had become a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer. I met him at a coffee shop an hour later, my voice trembling as I recounted the conversation I'd overheard. Ben listened patiently, his expression growing more grim with every word. When I finished, he didn't offer empty reassurances. He got straight to the point. "Paige, this is serious. If what you overheard is true, this is way beyond a family squabble. Forging a signature on a title transfer or a gift affidavit. It is a felony." He leaned forward, his voice low and firm. "We need facts. Before we do anything else, you need to confirm the status of the vehicle's title. You can do that online through the state DMV portal. I'll walk you through it." We sat there in the coffee shop, and with Ben guiding me on his laptop, I logged into the public records database. I entered the car's vehicle identification number, my stomach twisting into a painful knot. I hit enter and waited for the page to load, and there it was, in cold, blackhand, white text. Owner, Chloe last name. Date of title transfer, 2 weeks after I gave her the keys. Transfer type, family gift. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Seeing it there, official and undeniable, was a physical blow. The document my father had me sign was a sham, a prop to get me to hand over the keys. They had planned this all along. The guilt trips, the fake tears, the promises. It was all an elaborate con. Ben placed a hand on my arm. "Okay," he said calmly. "This is bad, but it's also our proof. They've committed a crime. You have options here." "What options?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Call the police on my own family." The thought made me sick, but the alternative, letting them get away with it, felt even worse. "That's one option, the nuclear one," Ben said. "It would likely lead to criminal charges for your dad and Chloe. Another option is to use this as leverage. We can confront them civilly, demand the full value of the car under threat of legal action, both criminal and civil." We spent the next hour talking through the details. Ben explained that my father, the retired accountant, had likely used his knowledge of loopholes to push the paperwork through, never imagining I would check. He'd probably told a little white lie to a contact at the DMV, signed my name himself, and filed it. It was arrogant and it was criminal. As I drove home, the initial shock began to morph into a cold, hard rage. They hadn't just stolen my car. They had stolen my trust. They had taken my love and my desire for family peace and twisted it into a weapon against me. They had fundamentally misunderstood who I was. They thought because I was responsible and quiet, I was also weak and compliant. They thought their difficult daughter would eventually just roll over and accept the injustice. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I wasn't just some detached observer in a control tower anymore. I was on a warpath. My family had created a problem, and I was going to be the one to calculate the perfect, devastating solution. The investigation was over. It was time to start planning. The plan Ben and I devised wasn't just about getting my money back. It was about accountability. It was about making my family face the consequences of their actions, not in a private, shame-filled conversation, but in a way they couldn't ignore or twist. It needed to be public, precise, and final. The perfect opportunity presented itself in the form of an invitation texted to me by my mother. They were hosting a big family barbecue in 2 weeks. The email read, "Come celebrate summer with us. We'll be introducing Prince to the extended family and celebrating Chloe's new career ventures." The audacity was breathtaking. They were using my stolen car as a prop to celebrate my sister's non-existent career. This barbecue would be the stage for my confrontation. The first step of the plan involved Ben drafting a series of formidable-looking legal documents. He prepared a formal demand letter, citing the specific statutes for fraud and forgery in our state. It detailed the crime they had committed and demanded immediate payment for the full Kelly Blue Book value of the car $36,400. 150 within 10 business days. It also included draft copies of a civil complaint for fraud and a police report, making it clear that if they didn't comply, these would be the next steps. It was legal shock and awe. While Ben handled the paperwork, I did my own research. I called the dealership where I'd purchased the car, speaking to the head of the service department, who I'd gotten to know over the years. I asked him a very specific question. You know that weird issue with the timing belt on that model year, the one that's not part of any official recall, but that you guys always warned me about. He knew exactly what I was talking about. Oh yeah, he said. If you don't do that specific preemptive service at 50,000 miles, the belt can slip. It won't wreck the engine right away, but it's a ticking time bomb. It'll start with a little engine knock, and if you ignore it, the whole thing will seize up. It's a $12,000 repair job. I checked the car's mileage when I gave it to Chloe. It was at 49,800 miles. I had an appointment scheduled for that exact service the week after she took it. I had even mentioned it to her in passing. Make sure you get that 50K service done, it's really important. I'd told her. I knew with absolute certainty that she hadn't. It was an expense she would have deemed unnecessary. That little piece of information was the final, perfect piece of my plan. For the next 2 weeks, I played my part. I responded to my mother's text with a cheerful, "Can't wait to see everyone." I ignored Chloe's social media posts. I let them believe I was oblivious, that I had accepted the situation. I let them walk into the trap with complete confidence, believing they had won. The day of the barbecue arrived, a bright, sunny afternoon. I put on a nice dress, did my hair and makeup, and placed the thick envelope of legal documents from Ben into my purse. I felt strangely calm, the way I do in the tower during a storm. All the variables were accounted for, all the pieces were in place, I was in control. As I drove my old, reliable backup car to my parents' house, I didn't feel sadness or regret. I felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about reclaiming my self-respect. I arrived at my parents' house to a scene of idyllic family bliss. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were scattered across the backyard. The smell of grilling burgers filled the air, and there, in the center of it all, was Prince, the golden retriever, and my sister Chloe, leaning against my midnight blue coupe, which was parked conspicuously on the lawn like a trophy. She was holding court, telling some story to our cousins, no doubt embellishing her influencer success. My parents greeted me at the door, their smiles wide and completely fake. "Paige, we're so glad you could make it," and my mother chirped, giving me a brittle hug. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice even and calm. I mingled for about an hour, making small talk and accepting compliments on how well Chloe was doing. "That car is just beautiful. She has such great taste," one aunt said. I just smiled and nodded, letting their ignorance fuel my resolve. Finally, the moment came. My father clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. "I'd just like to make a little toast," he announced, beaming. "To our daughter Chloe, who is really making a name for herself, and to our newest family member, Prince." Everyone applauded. As the clapping died down, I stepped forward. "I'd actually like to say something, too," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet yard. All eyes turned to me. My parents and Chloe looked slightly confused. I walked over to Chloe, a warm smile on my face. "Chloe, I am so incredibly proud of everything you've accomplished." I began, the sarcasm completely lost on her. She beamed, "And I have a small gift to celebrate your new car." I pulled the thick envelope from my purse and handed it to her. She took it, a puzzled look on her face. "What is this? Open it," I said gently. In front of our entire extended family, Chloe opened the envelope. She pulled out the documents. I watched her face as she read the first page, the demand letter. The color drained from her cheeks. She started shuffling through the other pages, the draft civil complaint, the copy of a police report for felony fraud. Her hands began to shake. She looked up at my father, her eyes wide with panic. He hurried over, snatching the papers from her. I watched him read, his jovial host facade crumbling into a mask of pure horror. My mother joined them, her face contorting in confusion and then dawning terror as she understood what she was looking at. I kept my voice light and conversational, but loud enough for everyone to hear. I thought it was best to handle this legally, I explained. Since forging my signature on a DMV gift affidavit to transfer the title of my $36,000 car was a bold move. I believe the term for that is felony fraud. Ben, my lawyer, drew those up for me. A shocked silence fell over the backyard. My cousins and aunts were staring, their mouths agape. I then turned my full attention to Chloe. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, my voice full of fake concern. "I just wanted to remind you about that 50,000 mile service I told you about. Did you ever get that done?" Chloe just stared at me, speechless. "I didn't think so," I continued sympathetically. "Because I've heard a tiny little knocking sound in the engine lately. According to the dealership, if the timing belt isn't serviced at exactly 50K miles, it starts to slip. It's a ticking time bomb, apparently. A $12,000 repair. I'm sure you've been saving up, though. Good luck selling it to cover the $36,450 you now owe me." That was it, the final blow. The chaos I had predicted erupted. My mother started crying. My father was stammering, trying to tell everyone it was a misunderstanding. Chloe just stood there, holding the papers, looking utterly broken. My aunts and uncles were whispering furiously, looking from me to my parents with expressions of shock and disgust. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. My job was done. I turned around, walked through the stunned crowd, got into my car, and drove away without a single look back. The final drive away from them was the most liberating feeling in the world. The aftermath was exactly as I had anticipated, swift and decisive. The public humiliation was a catalyst that no amount of private denial could overcome. My father called me the next day, not to apologize, but to furiously accuse me of destroying the family. I didn't argue. I just said, "Ben is expecting your lawyer's call. You have 9 business days." Then I hung up and blocked his number. I blocked my mother's and Chloe's numbers too. Faced with irrefutable evidence, public shame, and the very real threat of criminal charges, they had no choice. They didn't have the money to pay me outright. They had spent a significant chunk of it on the dog. They were forced to sell the car immediately. As I had predicted, Chloe's neglect had already taken a toll. The engine knock I had helpfully pointed out was now audible to any potential buyer with a discerning ear. They couldn't get a private buyer and had to sell it to a dealership at a massive loss. They managed to scrape together the money and wired the full $36,450 to my account on the 8th day. There was no note, no apology, nothing. Just the cold, hard transfer of funds. That transaction was the last communication I ever had with them. The extended family, having heard the full story from a mortified aunt, sided with me. My parents and Chloe became pariahs, their reputations in tatters. I never wanted the car back. It was tainted by their deceit, but the money was mine. It represented years of my hard work, my discipline, and my sacrifice. It was the physical proof of my independence, something they had tried to steal from me. I didn't buy another fancy car. I didn't need it anymore. The car had been a symbol of freedom, but I realized that true freedom wasn't a thing I could own. It was the ability to walk away from people who hurt you, to set boundaries, and to respect yourself even when your own family won't. Instead, I took that $36,450 and used it as a down payment on a small condo in a new part of the city, far away from my old neighborhood and its memories. It's my space, earned with my own labor and protected by walls they will never be invited to enter. Sometimes, when I'm guiding planes through the dark, I think about the trajectory of my own life. I see how I navigated away from a massive storm, how I chose a new flight path. I lost a family, it's true, but I gained something far more valuable, peace. And as I look out over the city lights from my new window, I know I'm on the right course, heading towards a new horizon that is entirely my own.